With the end of the 80s approaching with rapid speed, we found ourselves on the verge of a new decade, and a new Sleepaway Camp movie. Well, sort of. With Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 being filmed back-to-back through 1987, and Sleepaway Camp 2 only having come out 12 months previously in 1988, 1989's Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland, feels a bit tired, I think is the nice thing to say about this. It's basically more of the same, but whereas usually more of the same when the previous film was quite enjoyable is something to be relished, here it's beginning to wear a bit thin. The plot's pretty much non-existent right off the bat, and it kind of gives the vibe that what we're seeing are the deleted scenes from the scripting stage of Sleepaway Camp 2, loosely tied together via a paper-thin narrative. So, Angela's back. Not that she went anywhere, really. She's been in hiding since the events of Sleepaway Camp 2. The film appears to be set about 12 months after the events of the second film, and Camp Rolling Hills has been shut down, bought out, repurposed and reopened as Camp New Horizons. The owners of the new camp are desperately trying to distance themselves from the horrific events that befell the camp the year previous, but Angela gets wind that the camp is set to reopen, and a chance encounter with a girl who's heading to the camp to become a counsellor ends in a murder and Angela effectively assuming her identity. She wears a brilliant disguise, she gets a different haircut, and literally no one recognises this girl who most definitely must have been on every wanted poster this side of the equator. And so the carnage begins again as Angela begins once again to pick off her fellow counsellors, and this is just Sleepaway Camp 2 again but with minor variations and weaker gags, isn't it? I wish I had more to say about this movie, honestly, but in all honesty, it's just so similar to Sleepaway Camp 2 that had it not been for the haircut change with Angela, I'd have sworn they just made the movie either on the fly or from remnants of the cutting room floor. The script is slightly less sensical than the second film, there's just too many mental leaps the filmmakers ask you to make in order to justify this film's existence. Angela shouldn't have been able to get anywhere near Camp New Horizon without someone immediately recognising her and the police cracking her head in within 30 minutes of her trying to get the campers to do a round of the Happy Camper song. The death scenes are slightly more intricate, funny and interesting than Sleepaway Camp 2, but only slightly. And if, like me, you double feature 2 and 3 back to back, it seems almost impossible not to, really. It can become quite dull after about 30 minutes into the third film, as most of the deaths follow quite a similar formula to Sleepaway Camp 2, which was counsellors lured away from the group, Angela does a funny bit where she tries to find something to off the counsellor with, and the death is somewhat fitting of what kind of arsehole that counsellor was. Angela returns to the group, who then ask, "Where is the dead counsellor?" and Angela does another funny. Next scene. It's really predictable. While the dialogue is still quite eccentric, semi-dry and a bit acidic in places, it's the delivery which continues to ultimately keep me watching this film. Performances here are as over the top, if not more so, than the second film, and this is easily the strongest element this film has going for it. It's a glass cannon in that regard. Every other element of this film is mediocre to poor, but the acting, well, it's fantastically awful. Bordering on John Waters-esque in places, it's just pure hamtastic brilliance. And it's worth sticking around just to see Angela and the other counsellors interacting with each other. Pamela Springsteen, again, is top-notch here, even if it is more of the same, and while I class Judy in the first Sleepaway Camp to be the high watermark of my favourite hamtastic performance of the series, this movie gets pretty close to hitting those heights in my opinion. The Cine and Direction are weathered. I think weathered is probably the best way to describe this. Whereas Sleepaway Camp 2 was a film that was simultaneously trying to ape older slasher movies while equally trying to define where it thought the direction of slashers lay in future, Sleepaway Camp 3's Cine and Direction by 1989 standards look positively vintage. It looks like a film trying to ape Sleepaway Camp 2's attempts at aping older slashers. A copy of a franchise based on a genre that wasn't particularly known for its amazing Cine and Direction even at its peak in the first place. Had this come out in '88 alongside Sleepaway Camp 2, I'd probably be more favourable to it. but the risk of shooting your sequels back to back is sometimes it can make the latter half look and feel a bit dated compared to its predecessor. For example, see The Matrix or Back to the Future, and inevitably the Avatar sequels whenever they dribble out. Much like the second film, this movie's soundtrack is fairly unmemorable. It's slightly heavy, rocky stuff mixed in with the odd synth strike, but that's your lot, really. This franchise isn't particularly known for its scoring. Well, except for the first film, but even then, that's not iconic, it's just not as forgettable as these movies' soundtracks are. When I say forgettable as well, I mean I remember a rocky-ish track for the introduction of this movie, and a rocky-ish track for the end credits. I know I heard synths in there somewhere, but otherwise I literally couldn't hum you one track from this movie's OST. Sleepaway Camp 3 Teenage Wasteland was released in the UK as Nightmare Vacation 3 under Futuristic Video in 1989. It was cut, and not lightly. It wouldn't be seen again until 2004, when Anchor Bay would release it as part of a set with the other two Sleepaway Camp movies. I believe this version was finally fully uncut in that set, but much like Sleepaway Camp 2, the print quality wasn't amazing, and it did kinda have that dumped on disc vibe about it. 88 Films finally stepped up in 2016, releasing this film on Blu-ray uncut with admittedly quite limited extra features. If Amazon is anything to go by, they released 2 and 3 together on the same day. The PQ's probably the best this film's ever going to look, though it would have definitely been nice to have more in terms of extras. Though in fairness, Sleepaway Camp 2 was pretty comprehensive on the extras front, so it's understandable that this didn't go fully extensive here. To me, Sleepaway Camp 3 marks the beginning of a downward spiral for the series. The original Sleepaway Camp is genuinely entertaining and well written as a sleeper-slasher classic. Sleepaway Camp 2 is bombastic, eccentric, and quite anarchic compared to the original. This, it feels tired. It's the equivalent of when a sitcom does a revival special and relishes in digging out in-references and digging up festering catchphrases. While the performances are still there in terms of that weird and wonderful eccentricity, it's just worn out. And if you've seen 2, I don't think you'll honestly really get anything new out of this one. Well, this week's review's wrapped up quite a bit earlier than usual. I'll be honest with you, I feel kind of bad just to leave things here, I don't want to shortchange you. So here's something extra to give you guys a bit more bang for your buck. Sleepaway Camp 4: The Survivor is an unfinished film. I don't care if it was completed in 2012, it wasn't completed, was it? It's unfinished. The film was in production in 1992 when the production company behind the feature, Double Helix Films, went bankrupt with only roughly 34 minutes of usable footage in the bank, plus some extra roll to be used for promotional trailers. In 2002, the rushes for this movie were included on a bonus disc as part of a box set of the Sleepaway Camp movies only available from Best Buy. And in 2012, filmmaker Dustin Ferguson assembled a cut of this movie using exposition slides, newly recorded narration from the original cast of Sleepaway Camp 4, very poor quality recordings I might add, and clips from the 3 previous Sleepaway Camp movies. Effectively, this is a clip show, a best of the first 3 Sleepaway Camp movies if you will, framed around a paper-thin narrative that makes Sleepaway Camp 3 look like Reservoir Dogs. The film is set 4 years after the events of Sleepaway Camp 3 and follows Alison Kramer, a woman plagued by flashbacks and nightmares of several horrible murders. Concerned, she goes to visit a psychiatrist who believes that Alison was a victim present at these murders and that in order to overcome her mental block and quash her night terrors, she needs to visit the site where the murders took place in her flashbacks, which is a summer camp, in an attempt to reconnect with these memories. So she does. The park's abandoned, barring some police and the occasional hunter, and the rest of the film could best be described as Alison wanders to a part of the camp, reminisces, cue the clip show element, and occasionally narration adds Alison's thoughts about her feelings to those clips. There are a couple of runaround scenes revolving around the cops and the hunters, but nothing substantial, and at the end of the movie it's revealed that Alison is actually Angela. and that an ambulance driver from the third Sleepaway Camp film knocked Angela out and caused her to lose her memory. The film makes a big deal out of this plot twist reveal, but honestly, she starts referencing memories that only Angela would have ever remembered pretty early in the film's runtime, so it's far from a surprise. This is a poor film, honestly, and I kinda resent calling it a film. I mean, if you needed to book someone up on Sleepaway Camp 1, 2 and 3 as quickly as possible, and you didn't care about making those movies seem in any way good, this would probably go some way to helping you out. But in all honesty, this is just a cobbled together mess of a release in my opinion. Would this have fared any better had it been completed in the 90s as originally intended? Probably not. From what I've seen of the released footage, it's direct-to-video grade bad, with no notable highlights. I can't really talk about the Cine and Direction professionally, because these are the barest of bare rushes that are being worked with here. Who knows what reshoots would have been needed and what material would have ultimately been cut. There's no way I could really say if this was overall a good or bad final product. Of what I've seen, it looks cheap. But I can't be too hard on this footage-wise because, well, this is all we really have. Performance-wise, we're looking at porno quality here. It's bad. A real change in tone from 2 and 3, let's say. Here, it's phoned-in seriousness, but because so little footage from 92 exists, it's largely footage without any dialogue, meaning there isn't really any chance to get to the more over-the-top scenes, where phoned-in would have been quite funny, really, or even more interesting. As a result, it's just boring. Carrie Chambers as Alison is just dry and uninteresting, and captures neither of the vibes that either of the previous Angelas had. I mean, I'm sure she's a nice person, but here, it's a hard pass from me. As is the case for Victor Campos and John Lodico as the cop and hunter respectively. The sound design is atrocious. It's recycled music for the most part, and the newly recorded narration sounds like it was done in a car park somewhere. It's minimally processed with no silencing in place. It feels amateur and very out of place. There's also little to no integration with the clips from the older films, meaning quite often audio will just hard cut as we chop and change between the films. It's very messy sound edit-wise, and probably one of the worst I've seen that's got a professional DVD distribution. Sleepaway Camp 4 was finally released in its recobbled form on DVD in either 2012 or 2013. Multiple websites have conflicting dates as to its exact release. It was also announced in 2018 via the official fan Facebook page that a final cut version of this film was in the works for a Blu-ray release at some point in 2019 or 2020. Though that page has since been deleted and I can't find any information about this release outside of a couple of news outlets initially reporting its existence. From the sounds of it though, it looks like this would have been the same version as the DVD version, but using Blu-ray sources for the earlier 3 Sleepaway Camp movies as the base material. At a push, it may have used better high-res sources for the rushes for the 4th film, possibly with more cleaned up audio too, but I don't know. I won't be buying either version of this movie, so it doesn't really matter. It's not that I'm having a go at the makers of this project, not at all. If it made them and others like them happy to see this completed in their eyes, then more power to them. I really hope they got joy out of this. I'm a Doctor Who fan. We're renowned for taking the barest existing material of old stories and fleshing them out into full-blown recreations. So I get what it's like to have something in your hands that's the closest you'll ever get to the completed product. But to me personally, this film should have remained as rushes. It would have made a great extra for the Sleepaway Camp 3 set, and it would have made an even better what-if style documentary extra feature. I can practically hear Kim Newman now talking through the original script, explaining why the film was shut down and having a little chuckle about some of the sharp contrasts between this film and its predecessors. As it stands though, again for me at least, this is a glorified clip show, and not really much more than that. Still, it's part of the franchise's history, so I guess it at least deserves acknowledgement. I can't see how things can get any worse here, honestly. Oh.